Hello and welcome to another podcast from Aegis Accounting. Today, of course, it's all about coronavirus, COVID-19 and what support is available for your business. Today is the 25th of March. It's the morning. At the time I'm recording this is absolutely everything we know up until now. But obviously it's a very fast moving situation. So if you're watching this very many days into the future, then hopefully the content should all still be relevant, but all of the hypothesizing about the future may have come to a certain decision, which you can find on a page that we have put up that is specifically all to do with the most up-to-date guidance for small businesses due to what's going on with COVID-19. And we're updating that. We're watching all of the documents on gov.uk, we're listening into the news, we're looking at what's going through Parliament, and we're trying to bring that out as quick as we can into that document so that you can see both what's currently available and what mechanisms are in place for you to get what's currently available and to make use of that, and what we know or expect is coming in the pipeline, but is not yet confirmed. So all those details there's a link in this description straight to that document. If you're watching this multiple days later, maybe go straight there. There may even have been a more recent podcast. But if it is close to the morning of the 25th of March, then most of this should still apply. So I'll jump straight to the most important thing for most people who'll be watching this who are self-employed or a business owner, not necessarily drawing up their own salary. We've been waiting for a little while to understand what is the equivalent to this idea of 80% of your earnings up to a maximum of 2,500 that PAYE people can claim if they are furloughed. Furloughed is the specific word, and it means that you're sent home without work but kept on the payroll. That is the case when HMRC will make that payment of 80%, and it is that's the scheme, but it only works if you are furloughed. And I think here comes the rub for the rest of us. So there's currently, I believe it's an amendment to the coronavirus bill being currently discussed or in the process in Parliament. I'm not familiar enough with the whole process to know where it is, but I know it hasn't come out the end as legislation yet. But they are saying that the Secretary of State must, by regulations, introduce a scheme of statutory self-employment pay. This is the proposed amendment, not an agreed outcome yet. The scheme must make provision for payments to be made out of public funds to individuals who are A, self-employed, or B, freelancers. Now, I'm not sure whether the B, freelancers, will include those people who are limited company contractors, or whether it will include people who are working through a personal services company inside IR35 as a limited company contractor, whether it will include any kind of limited company director, because then that would of course also help business owners. Doesn't look here like it's being directed towards that. The payments to be made in subsection 2, the previous bit, are to be set so that the net monthly earnings of an individual specified do not fall below 80% of their monthly net earnings averaged over the last 3 years, or £2,917, whichever is lower. So that's what they're looking at, and essentially they've put it more succinctly in their explanatory statement. The purpose of this amendment is to make the government top up self-employed workers' earnings to the lower of 80% of their net monthly earnings averaged over 3 years, or £2,917 a month. If you've been going for a long time and you have been earning more than that or around that, then this will seem like your broad equivalent to the 80% pay that POA workers are waiting to be able to claim once that mechanism is in place. But if you have been in a growing business and 3 years ago it was either not there or earning very little, then this won't necessarily be quite the good news that you were hoping for. But still, it appears that this is not any form of, there's no mention of loan or anything being repayable. This is very equivalent to the free money being given to those who are furloughed if they're a POA worker. There's no mention of furloughed here, which is interesting because I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's saying top up the earnings. Now that's interesting because most people self-employed are still trying to work somehow. If you, for example, I know lots of people are suggesting that if you're doing non-essential work, you really shouldn't be out amongst people working if you can't observe the rule of being 2 meters away from other people. But as one of our clients quite succinctly put it, if you're working in plumbing and everyone's at home, there are quite a few blocked drains around now. So yeah, there may be for some of you that there is essential work that you are doing, and the top up may be entirely unnecessary. I mean, we talk a lot about the negative implications of what's going on and how to deal with them, but some people are actually working fine. So we mustn't forget that some parts of the economy are in greater demand, and some people are doing quite well without profiteering or doing anything, trying to make money out of it. They simply don't have a downturn in their business right now. But if you do, then we're going to be watching this very closely, and hopefully we'll see this come through. I'll pop that down. So, what else have we got? So I'm going to pop my other papers down. I'm going to lead from the current state of that webpage, that always up-to-date advice, because I've sort of tried to order it in a rough order that makes sense, so that you know what applies to you and what you can do. Everyone's a bit confused because it's all very quick and fast moving. So don't worry if you are too. So is everybody else. First and foremost, beware scams. We already know there's one going out about goodwill payments. I've seen a version of this scam. It looks very convincing. Proper looking HMRC pages seem to come up and ask you to enter details. There is no goodwill payment thing going on. It's not a thing. And if you go to our notes, you'll see a link which shows you an example of what you might need to avoid. But basically the concept is, if you get an unsolicited text message, unsolicited email, message through whatever medium, don't just blindly click the link. I would advise, if you're looking to corroborate what you're being told with what's actually out there, go to gov.uk by actually typing that into your browser window on whatever device you're looking, and use the search box there with some of the similar terms to find if there's anything to do with it available. If there's not, you're probably just the target of a scam. And unfortunately, we'll see a lot of that. We'll also see people trying to compromise remote working situations, because we know loads of people are doing remote working. So please make sure that that's as secure as you can possibly make it, because that will be a meaty target for the more nefarious people among us. Okay, so split up into these sections. I'm going to start with the sick or the self-isolating. So if you're sick or self-isolating due to the doctor's advice, not inclusive of the fact that we're in lockdown and can't go anywhere, if you're actually sick and having to self-isolate because of you or someone else in your household has recently displayed either of those two identified symptoms, then you're looking at SSP or you're looking at ESA to make sick payments to you. If you are on POIE and you've been regularly drawing a salary, even if you're a limited company director, I talked about more about that in a previous podcast. There may be some technicalities over it as to when your company was incorporated, and therefore whether you can apply for SSP if you have an employment contract, or if you have been paying yourself POIE without an employment contract but you were incorporated after 2009. It's a little bit complex, but essentially it's either SSP or ESA. If you are running a proper full payroll and you're a business owner and you receive salary through that payroll, go for SSP. If you can't, then do ESA. And if you do not pay yourself POIE, like many limited company owners and the self-employed, then look to ESA, which may or may not apply, because there's two different kinds. There's a new kind, there's a contribution-based kind. You have no choice but to look and figure it out, because it is not straightforward. But if you do run a payroll, then you can run that through your payroll software. I'm sure the providers of that software will have some guidance for you, or you can, if you're outsourced running your payroll, then your outsourced payroll provider can deal with that. And that's if you're an employer, that goes the same for your employees. If they are POIE and they are off sick, not just self-isolating, but they are not just under lockdown, but if they are self-isolating due to them or anyone in their family showing those two symptoms, then for 2 weeks they can claim that SSP, and you as an employer will be reimbursed that if you had less than 250, fewer than 250 employees on the 28th of February, that's the limit, then up to 2 weeks per employee you can reclaim that. The mechanism's not clear, but again it will depend on it going through your proper payroll systems. And then that will come however we know that it will come. paying your employees if you are an employer. That's the next part. Your PAYE employees, basically, if you don't have work for them, it would be far better to mark them as furloughed. That's FURLOUGHED, if you're going to go and Google that. But the term essentially means you have no work for them because of the drop in demand for work at the moment, but you want them on the payroll. And that is a new status that you can apply, but there's no mechanism to do it yet. So if you intend to do that rather than lay people off, and people are already worried that you're going to have to lay them off, maybe, entirely up to you, maybe it's a time to communicate to them that you intend to furlough them, and as soon as that mechanism is available, there's a portal that should be up from HMRC to allow you to do it, then you will do so, and they should receive 80% of their salary up to £2,500 per month directly from HMRC through the POA system. But it's, as they've said, HMRC are working urgently to set up a system for reimbursement. Existing systems are not set up to facilitate payments to employers. So there's no direct method to be able to do that just yet, but there will be. As far as I can understand, if you employ workers through an umbrella company and they are paying them PAYE, the same thing should be possible. But you, as effectively the client of the umbrella company, you will need to tell them you're furloughing those workers, and then the umbrella company will need to process that with the POA system and get them paid 80% of their salary. It's not clear how this 80% works, by the way. Is it a historical measure? I don't know. We don't have those details. But it's far better than laying anyone off, and I imagine that even if your current contractual situation with your umbrella company makes it awkward to change the status of workers, or if they downright don't want to do it, you can obviously give them the clear choice between the workers are either laid off or furloughed. You either have business in the future from us or you don't. The choice is yours. I think they're going to choose the furloughed status for myself. That's my take on it. If you go to your umbrella provider and say, listen, this is how it is, I can't pay these people, there's no money coming to you when you invoice, so you either furlough them or lay them off, but I want them furloughed, I want them to receive that 80%, do what you can. And I'm sure if there are any contractual issues, most good umbrella companies will work around that to make sure that they can keep the continuity of business. I think it's going to be more important to them. So moving on from there, if you have self-employed workers or limited company contractors, there's no clear mechanism yet. Again, we're waiting for that legislation that hopefully should come through with this top-up of self-employed earnings. That will deal with at least self-employed earnings and freelancers, which I assume may include limited company contractors. That is, those who are their own director. Again, I'm not then therefore clear whether it's going to be if they take dividends and salary mix, or if they take salary only, or will it be available if they only take dividends, because there have been such different tax treatment of those people and their statuses, and it's been the whole centre of this IR35 fiasco for so long that we don't know exactly what that support is going to look like. But if that legislation as it looks goes through, at least if you are self-employed, that should offer some help. But we're still awaiting something that explicitly handles limited company owners, limited company director shareholders. We don't currently have anything that is clear for that. Yourself as a business owner, again, if you are self-employed, then you're going to be looking at hoping for that same legislation to come through, I'm sure. If you are owning a limited company and you pay yourself a salary, it's going to depend whether you have a contracted employment and whether you can, strictly speaking, furlough yourself. It's not necessarily clear that a director can furlough themselves, because a limited company director has an obligation to the company to always be, except when sick, working in the interests of the company. So that seems incompatible with the concept of furloughed. You're still working, and furloughed is definitely that status that's going to work for POA employees. So if that isn't the route that's available to you, then will something like this self-employed route of top up to earnings become available? It's pure speculation at the moment. Hopefully we'll hear something further in the future, because right now it would appear that if you are a limited company owner paying yourself purely through dividends, that you simply are going to absorb a complete lack of profit if there is a complete lack of profit, and there'll be no income to you personally. That seems pretty unsatisfactory, but there are of course other measures which I'll get to that everyone has some access to, but it appears currently no specific income like grants, like grant might be the wrong word, but you are being given the money by the government, so it's not entirely alien to the concept that POA employees and self-employed employees hopefully soon will have access to. You may not have access to that as a business owner, so you may be relying on some of the other things I'm going to go through in a moment. So a lot of people are asking, so what other free money is there? So can you get a grant? If you occupy a property in the retail and you're in the retail, hospitality or leisure business sector and you pay business rates, or if you're a small business in any sector that occupies a property and you would pay business rates if it weren't for small business rate relief or rural rate relief that you claim, then your local authority will write to you, and that is what you've got to wait for. And then some help is coming, and I believe it depends on your rateable value or how much it is. Some it's 10k, some it's 25. The wording of it would seem to indicate that the 10k for small businesses, again with the eligibility criteria specifically of if you occupy a property and would pay business rates if it weren't for small business rate relief and rural rate relief that you claim, then you may be entitled to that £10,000 grant, but it would seem, vaguely speaking, that it's per business rather than per property. Again, I'm having to read into a very small number of words. Where is the plural? Where is not the plural? Is this available per property? It seems that it's not currently. But you never know, there may be some more clarity that comes from that later. If you have more than one business entity and each is paying rates elsewhere, it would seem to me that those are different businesses paying the rates and they would both be eligible for those grants. But we're now right into the nitty gritty, and you'll just have to see what the mechanism actually looks like when your local authority writes to you. It doesn't say where they're going to write to. They may write to where the business is registered. They may write to the service address of the business. They may write to whoever applied for the rate relief. They may write to the location of the property. Don't know. But that's what they've said. They will write to you, but you can get in contact with them directly if you would like. And there's a link in the main document that tells you which local authority you can look up and how to get in contact. But to be blunt, they've only had since Friday to be really aware of this, so you may end up with a very unproductive phone call where they simply say wait for the letter. But you can get in contact with them first. I know our local authority can take up to a week to get a letter out, so I don't know how long this is actually going to take before you receive that. But if you are eligible, you will receive that letter. That's the promise. So, the promise that they've written. Can you get a business rates holiday? So this is another form of grant really, because you're not going to owe this later. They're going to take away that bill. If you are a retail, hospitality, leisure or nursery business, there's no action required. The council tax bill will apply it. They may need to reissue a bill since we're so close to when they may have automatically already generated those, but it will be taken care of. Again, that's your local authority and you can contact them if you're at all worried about that. Otherwise, no other grants for now. There's no other pot of free money other than, as we can tell, there's the POA scheme of 80% of salary. There's there are benefits and such that we'll come to it later. There's the self-employed scheme, which hopefully will come through really soon and be confirmed that is what's going to happen. And there are these grants dependent upon properties and this business rates holiday. There are loans, however. Now, there are some effective loans. That is, if you're registered for VAT and you had a VAT bill coming between 20th of March and 30th of June this year, it will no longer be due until the end of the 2020-2021 tax year. That's effectively a loan. You're being given that VAT money back. Not given it back. You won't have to make that payment on that VAT bill. You can keep that cash in your business for what it's needed, but you will still need to pay it later. So it's essentially an interest-free loan of whatever your VAT bill would have been. Let's see, what else? Although have been explicit and updated recently the document to say that customers who would normally pay by direct debit should cancel their direct debit with their bank if they are unable to pay their VAT, please do so in sufficient time so that HMRC do not attempt to automatically collect on receipt of your VAT return. So that's important. Cancel that direct debit if you haven't done it already. That information came out like last night or yesterday at some point. And it also, they now specifically note this will incur no penalties or interest for late payments. So you're there, it's in writing. Okay, so if you've got a VAT bill due soon, cancel the direct debit, don't pay it, use that cash in your business and pay it later. It still will become due, but pay it later at the end of the year. The next, loan of a sort. If you currently owe the taxman, then you can use their time to pay service and pay them later. So essentially, I know it's completely case by case, arrangements will be agreed that way, but it's a loan of a sort. You have the possibility to defer something you already owe and were needing to make payments of, or a payment scheme, and you're essentially receiving the ability to not do that. If HMRC agree to it, it's case by case, and that's owed bills. This is stuff that's already late. So hopefully you'll be able to get something from that. If you're paying your self-assessment contribution advance, that's advance payments. If your net income was over a certain amount, I think it's over 10,000, something like that. Don't quote me, I forget the exact figures with all the numbers going around my head. But if you had advance payments, if you were told by HMRC you're going to need to make an advance payment against your tax bill at the end of January, and at the end of July. The one at the end of July, the end of January obviously was due already, but the one due at the end of July will be deferred until the following January. So again, if you were going to make a payment in advance for your self-assessment, you now no longer will make that payment in July. It's again, of sorts, a free loan with no interest to the end of the year because you won't need to make that payment. But yeah. Okay, next one. If you can't pay your commercial rent, this one's very recent, this came out towards the end of yesterday. The government has now said that commercial tenants who cannot pay their rent because of COVID-19 will be protected from eviction. This is for missed payments until the 30th of June, with the option for the government to extend it if it's needed. It's a loan in effect if you absolutely can't pay your rent. Of course, you have a business relationship with your commercial landlord, so be open and honest, but if you can't make the rent, you won't be evicted, at least not until the 30th of June for now, or perhaps the way they're phrased this is important. For those missed payments, they won't be evicted for that purpose. So if a few months later they were to try to do that, I'm sure you would still find some recourse here. Not certain, but you can look at the proper document to find the exact wording, make sure you're happy with the choice. But they have been explicit, which is welcome because, of course, they'd already made that guarantee to private renters. So to see that in the commercial sector is very welcome indeed. If you cannot afford your commercial rent, you will not be evicted, at least for missed payments until 30th of June for now. And again, it's a loan in effect because this is something you don't have to pay, but it's not a holiday. You will still be liable for the rent, and obviously after your period of not paying rent, you'll still have you'll have an increased liability to your landlord, which you'll have to work out how to pay with them. So this is sort of a loan in effect. If you can't pay that, you basically don't pay that. Do you have one or more existing loans? Because they have suggested you should contact your lenders and arrange a payment holiday if at all possible, which is thereby effectively, again, a very short-term suspension of payments, which will help you with cash flow, but you'll still be liable for your loans or your existing loans. There's no change there. If those measures which you can take are not enough, then consider the coronavirus business interruption loan. They're available up to £5 million for 6 years, £5 million for 6 years with no interest payments during the first 12 months because the government pay those interest payments. As I've said on here, the government said that they're providing lenders with a guarantee worth 80%, but that should be neither here nor there to you. That only means the lenders have confidence in lending, because if you go bust, the government will pay them. If you don't go bust, you will pay them. This is a loan like any other loan, and you have to think about whether that's going to be right for you and your business. Were you performing well before? Do you expect to perform well again very soon? How much cash flow are you going to have to plug with a loan? It's always a dodgy, tricky scenario to imagine plugging cash flow with a loan. Ordinarily, under any ordinary circumstances, I would advise against doing that. But if you have exhausted all the other measures and there is a small shortfall that you are certain a loan can cover and not leave you and your business in financial troubles at the other end of this, however long it may last, then by all means consider that. That is available from, I think it's 40 different lenders, including the high street banks. So that is something to consider if you need to consider it. But yeah, and I'll come back to some of the other things I've said there in general. But that is basically it. Now, the rest is not to do with business in particular. This is for everybody, which may include you, especially if as a business owner you are struggling to take profit out of the business that you would use to pay your bills and to live your life, and you've not been explicitly looked after yet with any of the measures that seem to be put in place. There is universal credit, and there are calculators where you can input your earnings to understand what you may be eligible for. So there is specific guidance. I have a link to it, but it's understandinguniversalcredit.gov.uk/coronavirus. They have a specific page there, so to help you understand how that will work, and it is up to date with everything going on to do with coronavirus. So that could be a very helpful resource. There is the Turn to Us charity. They offer a great benefits calculator that I've used before. Consider running your anticipated earnings through it. You can do it several times, do a what if analysis. If I do well over the next 3 months, what will that look like? If I do badly over the next 3 months, what help could I get? Bear in mind that when you claim benefits as someone who's self-employed or a business owner, you often have to justify your income. That's the tricky step, especially at precisely this time of the year when we're nearly the end of a financial year. The last actual filed information about your accounts may have been from a very long time ago. They may be to do with nearly 3 years up to 2 years ago. That may be the last thing on record about the performance of your business. And again, that question is left floating around to do with topping up the self-employed earnings. Will we be in a rush to submit tax returns? At the best of the times, when that opens in April, it can be hard to do. In fact, it's normally late, even opening through HMRC, to be able to submit your tax return. So if you are rushing to do that so that you can prove your earnings, so that you can claim this self-employed payment, I don't know. I don't know whether it will be necessary. I have certainly heard rumours that some open banking mechanisms may be used to prove prior income for that purposes. And I've seen a technical demo of how that would work, but it is still pure rumour mill speculation as to whether that will be a mechanism worth looking at, as there are still many banks who don't have open banking available at all. And plus, if you're anything like me, you've hopped between a whole ton of banks and historically may have mixed some personal and business stuff together, at least within the 3 years prior, maybe at the very early stages of your business, which may be within that window that they want to look at. This could become a very messy, technically messy thing to do. So we don't know any detail about that yet, and hopefully we'll have some more information about that soon. But by all means, please do look at universal credit. Use the calculator, because you don't have to prove anything to calculate something, and you can see if it's worthwhile. It's worth noting that if you already claim either working tax credits or universal credit to any extent, the basic element has gone up, equivalent to £20 per week. That will become effective as of 6th of April, so we're still waiting for that to happen, but then they already had a small uplift, annual uplift due then anyway, so you should feel a little bit better off if you're already claiming that. But if you aren't already claiming, then do run the calculator on your new idea of your projected earnings and see what you can do. Good luck. It's a long process, but if you sustain running your what if analysis through, Turn to Us's calculator is very good, and you might find that you're entitled to some benefits quite quickly, which could really help. So do take a look. If none of the other measures are going to help you sustain your normal level of income from your business, do put your reduced level of income that you anticipate through one of these calculators and see if that's what's going to help you. Also, everyone should be able to get help with your home mortgage if you have one. Mortgage holidays are available for up to 3 months. Again, you'll still be liable for the amount, but it generally is a small increase spread over the remainder of the mortgage, is the result of a holiday. But up to 3 months, as I understand it, ask your lender, they'll give you the details. Also, there's a link here to Money Supermarket. That's not right. That's for buying. That's for looking and comparing new mortgages, which maybe now is not the time. Although rates are falling. MoneySavingExpert.com has a good summary on what's on offer from each provider, so you might want to have a look there as far as they know. And yeah, as they know, you will still be charged interest, but it's added to the total cost, and you get some short-term respite. So there's that. Help with your private rent. Landlords who have a buy-to-let mortgage can also benefit from mortgage holidays. So if you are struggling with your rent, talk to your landlord. You may both be able to deal with that gap without as much issue as you were hoping, and you are protected from being evicted, as we mentioned earlier, for commercial rent. In fact, the private rent came first. The government was quick to say this during, I think, the Prime Minister's question time when we actually said this, but they cannot legally evict you for 3 months, even if they are unable or unwilling to help with the payment holiday. So you may, if you don't have a fantastic relationship with your landlord, you might say it's going to be a payment holiday, and well, it is. So risk is on you. If it's your relationship with your landlord, if that's your relationship with your landlord, then so be it. I'm lucky enough to have a good relationship with ours, so I expect that we'll just be open, and hopefully you will be able to too, about your ability to pay. Not all landlords have a buy-to-let mortgage, so they may be depending on it for their source of income, so be aware of that. The only other miscellaneous item I've noticed is that the Business Improvement District ballots, if that affects you or your property, if you are part of a Business Improvement District and you're expecting to take part in the ballot in order to continue with all of that, that's being delayed to allow the local authorities to concentrate on more important stuff. And that's it. So what we're doing is we are watching the changes absolutely as quickly as we can, basically refresh and compare the changes in that document constantly, and we are providing updates to all of our clients as soon as we get an update or a change to that document that means there might be some beneficial action that can be taken. There was one more thing to add to do with insurance, and I have to get that particular bit of paper. There was some lack of clarity originally over commercial insurance and whether you could claim on it due to pandemic. They have made the wording in this document more clear. Originally, it would say if you were covered for pandemics and were and for government-ordered closures, but the government asked everyone not to go, they were saying that is closure, and they've confirmed that, and you should be able to claim that insurance. However, that's a misleading way of stating things because most people are not covered for pandemics or government-ordered closures. So that's an unlikely scenario that they're referring to as if it was going to be common. I think that led a lot of people to think that they were going to be able to claim on insurance when they couldn't. They've made that more clear with the blunt statement, most commercial insurance policies are unlikely to cover pandemics or unspecified notifiable diseases, that's a technical term, such as COVID-19. And then, however, if you did have insurance that covered government-ordered closure and pandemics, then that should be something you could do. Or government-ordered closure and unspecified notifiable diseases, technical terms that the insurers know about, then you should be able to make a claim. And then, they said that the policies differ significantly, so you have to check your terms and conditions. I'm sure you've already been doing that, but if you haven't, now's the time to check. They have added COVID-19 to the list of notifiable diseases, which basically means that insurers will have it in that category. So if you see that technical term anywhere in your policy documentation, that now applies to COVID-19. They've put a little bit of a summary on this. The effect of the government adding COVID-19 to its list of notifiable diseases is to ensure that businesses with unspecified notifiable disease cover are able to make a claim, subject to the terms and conditions in their policy. For example, someone infected with COVID-19 may need to have been on the premises. So it depends upon your policy. But good luck going through your legalese. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to look and see. So it did mention why notifiable disease is a technical term. It does explain that notifiable diseases are certain infectious diseases that registered medical practitioners have a statutory duty to notify the proper officer their local council or local health protection team about when they come across a suspected case. This includes things like cholera and anthrax and things where you might imagine a quick health response is required. COVID-19 is added to that category, and therefore that means that insurers, if you have insurance that includes that category in particular of notifiable diseases or unspecified notifiable diseases, then you should be able to make a claim, but you'll have to check the details of your policy. I notice here to do with events, I know that some of you are involved in that. Businesses with event cancellation policies that include unspecified notifiable disease extensions, that's specific, should be able to make a claim for the necessary and unavoidable cancellation, abandonment, curtailment, postponement and disruption of their event for reasons beyond the control of organisers and participants, subject to the other terms and exclusions of their policy. So it's still a case of checking the policy, but hopefully that notifiable disease thing will help. Insurance for major events are often bespoke. You're encouraged to check your terms and conditions. You're all encouraged to check your terms and conditions. You'll have to, and frankly, you'll just have to have that conversation with someone over the phone. That's basically what you're going to have to do. Try to make the claim if you think you can make the claim. And that is, I mean, they'll only tell you no if you can't, won't they? So it's worth the effort. Right. So many bits of paper. So much fast-moving information and so little detail on exactly how you're going to make these things happen. Hopefully I've helped with some of the detail on some of these things. There was a specific thing that I wanted to say, which is it's not all down for everybody. Not all businesses are negatively affected by the outbreak of coronavirus and COVID-19. For example, look at the remote working business, which of course is booming in response to that. Some have even gone the generous effort of reducing their prices or making certain features free in order to be able to help during this time. And of course, expand their client base and hope that people will sign up later. None of that, I think, should be morally looked down upon. That's my moral stance on it. It's not profiteering if you are offering something that is valuable in the world we find ourselves in and charging a reasonable amount for it. So I know that some of you are not negatively affected. Your business has changed, but you've changed along with it, and you're making money nicely without extortionate amounts that might be looked down upon. So if that's you, please don't feel guilty. It's a mentally hard time. You might be finding it hard to sleep. You might be finding it hard to imagine how things are going to go. You don't need to be kicking yourself for doing okay when other people are not doing okay. The other people who are not doing okay are having a raft of support measures being put in place to help them, but everyone should look to see how your business may positively change. There are certain parts of your business maybe getting extra demand that you can move into if you are doing any form of work that is now seen as valuable, then you may do better. For example, I imagine this podcast and this information will fly much further than some of the previous podcasts that I've done. I may grow more audience than I used to have. I may have more future clients than I used to have had this not happened. I'm not going to lose sleep about it. I know I'm only trying to do something that I think is going to be genuinely valuable to people. And obviously there's no charge for watching a podcast anyway, so I know that I'm not being extortionate in offering this information as best I can. So please don't feel guilty if you're doing okay through this. And also be aware that there are lots of people who will be reacting very thankfully as PAYE workers getting 80% of their earnings, but being sat at home not having to do very much. Yes, mental health issues are important, you may be going stir crazy, but also those people won't be going out to restaurants, they won't be going out to pubs, they won't be going out to bars. They may have more of their disposable income than they had before, because if they're not making those bills, this isn't everyone. If you're shouting at your screen, but I don't go out, well, me too. I'm not going to feel a positive effect from not going out. I never do. But those that do, they are there. They are in the world. They can't get their takeaways. They can't get this, that, the other, and they may be financially fine with the measures that are looking after them, which means that if you have business that appeals to those people, you may also be okay. And that is the aim, after all, of keeping the economy going as best it can throughout this. Money may flow in different places, but it will still continue to flow, and I hope that you're able to take advantage of that without profiteering and succeed throughout it, and at the very least get through it and be able to grow the other side. I really hope something that I've said today has been helpful, has helped you to understand what we know is currently available or is in the works. If you want any more information, there'll be a link to that always up-to-date guidance. But for now, that's it. I hope to see you again soon with hopefully something more positive, particularly for the self-employed and business owners who are really waiting for something explicit that's equivalent to that 80% that POA workers are being offered if they are furloughed. So, hope to get back to you with that soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.